now moving on to our TADHack winners. So now we have Daniel, who was the winner from TADHack Berlin with Snappy Kamailio. Over to you, Daniel.
Thanks, Alan. And thanks for inviting and organizing such a great event. So I'm Daniel. I'm one of the initial developers of what's now called Kamailio. So short introduction, I'm with one of the oldest startups in telecoms from this audience because it's a rather old project which was started in research. So as a short introduction, the current name Kamailio, but in the past we've been with SIP Express router, which was acquired back in 2005, 4-5, by Tekelec, which later was acquired by Oracle. So as you could see, open source, it's gaining more traction in telecom. I remember the early days where no one in telecom was actually willing to deal with open source, or they keep it like a huge secret. Now even at Telenor, they started a team inside using as much as possible open source. Short more about Kamailio. So it's a signaling SIP server. We don't deal with the media. We let media for other projects in open source space or in vendor space, like Asterix, FreeSwitch, just to name some in open source that you could integrate with Kamailio. And our main target are large deployments. So either like a lot of subscribers that connect at the same time, or huge amount of active calls, or as we counted, call setups per second. Because we know today everyone running a cloud telephony platform, they face a lot of, let's say, not friendly traffic, and you need to deal with that. So it's a lot important now to actually handle bad traffic, split that from the good traffic. So we have a lot of extensions from classic telephony to mobile world, IMS, voice over LTE, including diameter clients and server embedded in our application. You can do from instant messaging to presence to audio video calls. Again, we don't really care what you transport as a media of the session. It's important that the signaling, the people gets connected as fast as possible. So now going into the story of this TADHack. So I'm a programmer myself. I started in research. I'm a C coder by probably most that half of the day when I'm not involved in other deployments. And I still find it easier to write C code rather than sorting out voice call routing. But you know, I have to do that for a living. C code programmers are not that well paid in telecom world. So I'm coming from Berlin. I'm originally from Romania, just to clarify, but Berlin actually has a good history related to SIP as the core protocol for voice over IP. It was actually started more or less there from Henning Schurzrine by the Fraunhofer Institute, which also started the SIP Express router, where I was as part of the initial team. And I got my friend Dennis, which was organizing the TADHack, and I said, okay, continuing hacking over the weekend, it's not a bad idea, as I do it every day. And we met there with other guys, and we started to look at what we can do. As I'm more into trying to, you know, enhance Kamailio rather than using other APIs, I was intrigued by the proposal of Canonical Ubuntu with these snaps. So the idea was to make Kamailio friendly to build in this new kind of packaging model. So for those that are not familiar with Snap, I'll have to look at the Snapcraft.io. I'm not also that familiar with the system. It was my first touch with the system, but the idea behind it is not that you know, bad, and actually it's quite useful for what I have to do for earning my day-to-day living, like installing Kamailio, deploying on different environments, And if you look at how evolution went for telecom from bare metal, huge fridges that were running in the past, the entire telecom routing, to then virtualization, cloud system, and then even more lightweight like containers. Snaps are more or less like a lightweight containers, from what I understood. The Ubuntu guys are around that can shed more light on their internals. So practically, it's packaging an application, building together all the dependencies in a same package. So if you build it on a system with a library that has a version, then you don't really need to install it when you deploy it. It's all embedded. If there is an update to the library that introduces a regression, you are not affected. And more important, it wraps everything in a security layer, so it's running in a sandbox. So you have to tell from the moment you create a package what kind of access level you allow to your application. So eventually, if you have an issue in your application that could eventually expose to access, like buffer overflow, all these kind of attacks that could be exploitable, you are protected by another layer. So that's also good, because in telecom we know everyone is afraid of being penetrated and hacked. So it was my first touch with this after discussing with the guys around and looking at what I could do and how we can collaborate to get something built for the 2 days. And actually, the challenge that I faced was, how to sorting out all this, enforcing and releasing the restrictions that are coming with this security wrapper. And also was, as we detect the system as being a classic Linux, Ubuntu, we do some tricks around the library layers in order to increase performances. So for example, we create row sockets for UDP, because UDP was most used protocol in voice over IP, to increase the performances and get rid of some synchronization that is done by classic or by the standard library. But that was proved not to be allowed, or I haven't discovered in the short time how can I do it with the Snap format and restriction. So I had to put some patches in Kamailio in order to make it more friendly to build, like option to turn off the compilation with raw sockets when we do it for a Snap, as opposite of just automatically detecting it's a Linux system and then create raw sockets by default. Snaps are also having kind of 2 systems internally. It's a read-only one, which are the libraries, the binaries, so nobody should change them. And then you have the dynamic data and the dynamic folders for runtime. So as we create some control files for our application, so the admin of the VoIP system needs to see the online users and so on, we create control sockets and so on. I had to do some tricks of moving from the read-only file system inside the Snap to these runtime folders, update the paths in like a script before writing, and then prove to work quite smooth. So actually it was a lot of try and fail, and at the end, surprisingly, I ended up only with 4 patches that I push, and everything actually is available now on GitHub. As a future work, it's about deploying some additional tools that are helper tools for working with Kamailio, integration with other systems that we use for large deployments like MySQL cluster or Postgres. Backends could be NoSQL. And for my own interest would be performance evaluation to see the difference between, running on a bare metal virtualization container and the Snap environment. And of course, as Ubuntu has a store, afterwards I'll just put everything in the store, let the pipe throw money at me and retire young. So actually, again, everything is available on GitHub. In the afternoon, there will be a session in workstream 1, so Room Augusta, one about OTT apps, and I will have there a demo of what I did. I will show you if you want to build snaps. It's actually taking fast. When I did a pitch for the hack, I built Kamailio as I did the presentation as a snap, and already started while finishing the presentation. So it's really fast, which is something that I liked. It's not like, you know, when you build a Docker container, it takes quite a lot of time at the beginning. With this one, it's, you know, like just compiling Kamailio and just wrapping it in a bigger package than usual because all the dependencies are there. So come to this session if you have more questions. You have the link to the project on GitHub that I created with these spec files. You'll be surprised to see that the spec files to build a snap, it's a very simple YAML file, probably 20 lines, and that's all. So thank you again, and I hope that I'll see you later, or you just catch me around now. If you have some quick questions, I can answer until the next presentation. It's set up here. Thank you.
Excellent. So while you move over there, if David, if you could get yourself set up, and just to say this is a great example of the TAD ecosystem at work. Now, Daniel is a SIP expert. There's very few people in the world that understand that weird old protocol that's just overly complex. So, but in creating the Kamailio snap, I think it shows how easy, and I'll just hand over to Martin because I know he just wants to say a few words about what just happened here.
I actually wanted to say thank you. I couldn't have done it better. Like, you've done an excellent job of explaining the technology. We have updated the documentation, and we actually launched a long-term supported version last week, which you didn't have access to, so hopefully you find that useful. But in general, like, and the other thing about the app stores, what we're going to show this afternoon is how you can actually run your own app store as well as create apps and so on. So that last slide, we actually would like to make that a reality for 2017.
Me too.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Martin. Any questions from the audience? Just checking on the time. What time are we at now? 11:47. Okay. Oh, great. Ethan.
Could you compare the Snap packaging solution to Docker? What is the advantages of using Snap?
I think I have more experience with snaps than Docker, but maybe Martin can explain it a bit better because it's more about the technology behind.
Yeah, so Docker is very good for like scale out solutions because it generates like IPs and virtual servers for each thing. Snaps is more for robust software on devices. So if like the device has to be always working, things like transactional rollbacks and be able to like extend it with app stores and so on, as well as like have very detailed like access control to certain hardware interfaces and so on, are all the type of things that like for IoT, for next generation networking, cloud edge solutions where like snaps are superior to what you get from Docker.
So basically we've got all these processes distributed throughout the network. We've got more and more locations to run applications and services. So with Snappy Kamailio, we can be running a SIP server on a phone. We could be running it on a firewall or something else at the edge of the network. So
and come tomorrow to the dangerous demos. Maybe it will happen.
Exactly. That will be interesting to see. So
Okay.
what I'd like to do is to thank Daniel because we're coming up on time.
Thank you.